I too wish it had been different. It's a burden on my soul. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Guilt. Alas, yes. The joy and peace of a clear conscience. I could only hope for such a freedom. And it is true that you cannot live any kind of a life without regrets. Mine are manifold. See, I'm haunted by the possibility that all of my efforts and those of my family were in vain. As you have heard, my name is William Jay, son of that famous founding father, John Jay. Though my father had his struggles, I missed all of that, being born later in 1789. I was growing up in a world of splendor and privilege, but not one of contentment. See, Father was a very devout, restless man, while Mother was over here teaching us levity. He taught us faith and responsibility for our fellow, and a willingness to upset status quo. As an example, instead of sending me to his alma mater at Columbia for college, he sent me to Yale for their religious rigor. Don't get me wrong, I embraced the faith of our church. So much so that years later, my own household paused 3 times a day for prayer. And more so when Father talked about justice for all men. He meant it. Though he was a living contradiction. You see, he was one of the founders of the Manumission Society, a group dedicated to the eventual ending of slavery in this country and in the state. All the while he purchased slaves. Often. You see, his scheme was to purchase them and then have them work just for a few number of years to get their freedom. I love my father, I did. And I did defend his actions in my later writings, but in my heart, in my mind, dear God, in my very faith, I rejected all forms of slavery. By the time I was a teenager, I was already an advocate for immediate abolition. No man, woman, or child should work for any amount of time without their freedom. And I've said it many a times, I will say it again, that if slavery be inherently and necessarily sinful, it ought immediately to cease. Well, I who had so much, I felt that it was my Christian duty to protect the weak from the powers of the strong, to shield the poor from the oppressions of the rich. It struck me so deep that I gave up my desires of becoming a farmer, and I went to law where I thought I could better serve. Sadly, that only gave me the title of a radical, a rabble-rouser, an attention seeker. True, I did write copious letters, articles, and books condemning slavery in the wishy-washy support of the Manumission Society for their gradual, very gradual manumission. And I vehemently attacked the Colonization Society for their attempts of freeing slaves only under the criteria that they be sent away to Liberia, effectively trying to eradicate all people of color from America. Needless to say, I wasn't invited to too many parties. But what's more, many was the article written and published to attack me and my efforts. Eventually, I was removed from my judgeship in Westchester County on the grounds that I was too political. The church rejected my resolutions of the Diocesan Convention to end its support of slavery. I was tempted to leave, as was many other abolition-minded society men, until speaking with my good friend, fellow Presbyterian Congressman Salmon P. Chase. I concluded to stay. Salmon, I said, allow us to remain in our church, and from there seek the truth. Giving our bishops and clergy no peace while they continue to side with the oppressor, allow us to proclaim the wrongs of the slaves and the duties of the church. And I did. I remained. I raised my children as Presbyterians. I must say I am a bit proud of my son John. He became a bit of a rabble-rouser himself. It was he who personally fought tirelessly to have St. Philip's admitted to the Convention of the Diocese of New York. But even with all of that, all my hard work, I was not able to stop slavery. I was not able to stop the colonization of society. I was not able to stop the atrocious acts of selling enslaved people to plantations in the South, or the kidnapping of free black people into slavery. But worst of all, I was not able to convince my fellow Presbyterians that all of God's children should be treated with the dignity and the respect of brothers and sisters. And for all that, I was blessed. I was blessed with a loving family, with a sense of purpose, and the wealth to pursue it. And unlike so many, I had the good fortune of being born a white man in America. I suppose my longest lasting, most personal blessing came from my friend Frederick Douglass after my death. He gave a eulogy for me. It was 25 pages long. But it wasn't that. It was the conclusion. He wrote, "He has taught us how to live, and he has taught us how to die. But how could I but not regret that I couldn't do more? I pray regularly that I be forgiven for my failings. Yes, regrets, I've had quite a few. Glad that you were given your freedom. Oh. Pray, say more. I lend you a willing ear.